Scene script. Have you ever wondered how critical race theory impacts the educational landscape in the United States? Critical race theory, or CRT, is a theoretical framework that has been stirring conversations and debates in various sectors, most notably in education. Originating from legal studies in the mid-70s, it has since expanded its reach to sociology, education, political science, women's studies, and even cultural studies. At its core, CRT examines society and culture as they intersect with categorizations of race, law, and power. It challenges the conventional narratives around race, pushing us to critically reflect on the roles and implications of race in our societies. Now, you may be wondering, how did it evolve over the years? Well, CRT has roots in the civil rights movement and critical legal studies. It emerged as scholars sought to understand why the lofty promises of civil rights legislation had not translated into substantial changes in the lives of people of color. Over the years, it has evolved to incorporate intersectionality and examine how race intersects with other identities, such as gender, class, and sexuality. In the sphere of education, critical race theory offers a lens to understand and critique how racial inequalities are perpetuated in our schooling systems. It pushes for a curriculum that acknowledges and addresses the historical and ongoing impact of racism on communities of color. However, its application in education has sparked controversy. Critics argue that it promotes division and a sense of victimhood among students of color, while proponents believe it is vital for fostering an understanding of systemic racism and promoting social justice in education. The debate around critical race theory is not just academic. It has real implications on what is taught in schools, how it's taught, and who benefits from this knowledge. It is a debate that impacts educators, students, and parents alike. Now imagine two perspectives, one supporting critical race theory in education, and the other opposing it. Let's delve into this debate. Consider the first perspective, advocating for critical race theory in education. Let's delve into the reasons why some people passionately support the integration of critical race theory, or CRT, into our education system. One of the primary arguments is the necessity to recognize and challenge inherent racial biases. It's no secret that biases exist, often unconsciously, and can profoundly affect our interactions and judgments. CRT asserts that by teaching children to identify and question these biases, we can create a more conscious and empathetic society. Furthermore, proponents argue that understanding systemic racism is essential to grasp the full picture of our nation's history and societal structure. Systemic racism is not a series of isolated incidents, but rather a broad pattern woven into the fabric of our society. It is a complex, multifaceted issue that requires a nuanced approach to understand. Advocates for CRT believe that by incorporating this theory into education, we can provide students with the tools to understand and challenge these systems. The third pillar of the argument for CRT is the fostering of a more inclusive and equitable learning environment. In a diverse society like ours, it is crucial that all students feel seen, heard, and represented in their education. CRT encourages the inclusion of diverse voices and experiences in the curriculum, promoting a sense of belonging among all students. This inclusivity can lead to enriched classroom discussions, a deeper understanding of different perspectives, and ultimately, a more holistic education. Moreover, supporters of CRT contend that it encourages critical thinking, a skill highly valued in many areas of life. By engaging with complex issues like systemic racism and bias, students are challenged to think critically about societal structures and their role within them. Finally, advocates argue that CRT can be a catalyst for societal change. By educating the next generation about systemic issues, we are empowering them to be the change-makers of tomorrow. So that was the argument in favor of critical race theory, but what about those who oppose it? Now, switch your attention to the opposing perspective, those who are against critical race theory in education. It's essential to understand that this viewpoint isn't rooted in opposition to discussing racial issues or promoting equality. The concerns are more nuanced and focused on the potential implications of critical race theory's specific methodologies. One of the main arguments against critical race theory is the fear that it could increase division among students rather than fostering unity and understanding. Critics worry that by highlighting and scrutinizing racial differences, we might inadvertently encourage students to see each other primarily through the lens of race. This emphasis could potentially overshadow the shared human experiences and values that bind us together. Another concern is the potential promotion of a victimhood mentality. Some critics argue that critical race theory can lead to a worldview where people are divided into categories of oppressors and victims based on their racial identity. This categorization, they fear, could disempower individuals, suggesting that their life outcomes are predetermined by systemic forces beyond their control rather than their actions and decisions. Finally, there's a concern about indoctrination versus education. Critics argue that education should encourage critical thinking, presenting multiple perspectives and allowing students to form their own opinions. However, they worry that critical race theory, as it's often taught, presents a single, highly politicized viewpoint and discourages dissenting opinions. This approach, they argue, is closer to indoctrination than true education. It's crucial to note that these concerns aren't about avoiding discussions of race or denying the existence of racial inequality. Instead, they're about how we approach these topics in a way that promotes unity, empowers individuals, and encourages critical thinking. Clearly, this perspective has its concerns about critical race theory. But how do these two viewpoints impact U.S. education? With these two perspectives in mind, what is the actual impact of critical race theory on U.S. education? Well, let's start with the curriculum. Critical race theory has been instrumental in shaping a more comprehensive and inclusive curriculum. It's pushed for the inclusion of diverse narratives, histories, and perspectives that were previously overlooked or marginalized. This shift has broadened the scope of learning, allowing students to gain a more holistic understanding of our nation's history and society. Yet, this shift hasn't been without controversy. Some critics argue that this new curriculum is divisive, that it focuses too much on race and identity, often at the expense of a unified national narrative. They worry that such a focus might foster division among students instead of unity. Now let's talk about teacher training. Critical race theory has influenced how educators are trained to teach. There's now a greater emphasis on understanding systemic racism and its impact on education. Teachers are being equipped with the tools to not only teach about race and racism, but also to identify and challenge racial bias in the classroom. However, the question remains, is this too much to ask of our educators? Critics argue that this approach places an undue burden on teachers, asking them to be social justice warriors instead of focusing on their primary role of imparting knowledge. Lastly, let's consider student experiences. For many students, especially those from marginalized communities, critical race theory has made education more relatable and relevant. It's given them a voice and a platform to share their experiences and perspectives. Yet there are concerns that such a focus on racial identity might inadvertently reinforce stereotypes and further polarize students. Critics argue that education should strive for colorblindness, where all students are treated equally, irrespective of their race or ethnicity. As we can see, critical race theory has significantly influenced the educational landscape. But what does this mean for the future of U.S. education? Looking at these perspectives and the current impact, what can we anticipate about the future of U.S. education? As we've seen, critical race theory has sparked a significant debate within the realm of American education. Its impact is tangible, and its implications are far-reaching. But what does the future hold? How will this theory shape the education landscape moving forward? If critical race theory continues to gain traction, we might see more inclusive and diverse curricula that reflect the experiences of all students. We could anticipate a shift towards education that doesn't shy away from the complexities and realities of race in America. We might see an education system that encourages students to question, to critically analyze, and to empathize with different perspectives. On the other hand, if resistance to critical race theory prevails, we might see a continuation of the status quo. Education could remain largely unchanged, with curricula that some argue are not reflective of the diverse experiences of all students. Some fear that this could perpetuate a lack of understanding and empathy, fostering division rather than unity. But these are not the only possible scenarios. The future is a canvas yet to be painted, and the brush is in our hands. The way we engage with critical race theory today will shape the education of tomorrow. So what can you do? Reflect. Consider the information we've explored. What resonates with you? What challenges you? What makes you uncomfortable? It's in these moments of discomfort that we often experience the most growth. And remember, this isn't about choosing a side. It's about engaging in a dialogue. It's about understanding that education is a powerful tool that can either unite or divide us. It's about recognizing that our perceptions of history, race, and identity can significantly impact the way we interact with the world. Whether you support or oppose critical race theory, it's crucial to engage in this conversation for the betterment of our education system. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep learning.